Welcome to Satsuki Bonsai Demystified. I'm Rick Garcia. When I first considered starting this channel, there were a couple of subjects that instantly came to mind and helped me decide to move it forward. What I'll be talking about today is just one of those subjects. This video is for those of you who have my book or have been considering purchasing a copy. Now, since its publication, I've had a desire to offer thoughts on how to get the most out of my book and also lend insight into how it came to be. With that in mind, here's what I'll be sharing with you today. Talk about a few misconceptions about the book. I'll talk about what I intended, and by that I mean how to use the detail that's contained within it. I'll talk about key sections of the book that help unlock all of the information in the book. I'll give you some insight into why I wrote the book. Then I'll also talk about the differences between the different versions. With those topics stacked up, let's get to it. I'm starting with misconceptions because this helps establish a logical sequence for today's topics. Fortunately, I've only observed two misconceptions to this point. The first misconception is, the book is not comprehensive. When I first considered writing this book, my first thought was to offer a book that covered all aspects of Satsuki as bonsai. Here I wish to emphasize Satsuki as bonsai, as this is an important distinction that I'll revisit later in this video. When I began to outline the book, I realized early on that the final product would not only be too big, and by that I mean too many pages, but it would also result in a purchase price far higher than I had intended. To resolve these issues, I thought back on interactions with attendees during my lectures and demonstrations and workshops. And bear in mind, I was unwilling to edit out valuable detail in order to reduce overall page count. Thinking about those interactions, the primary issue that Satsuki owners had, or asked questions about, centered around the lack of a fundamental understanding of the species. This realization crystallized a clear directive for me. Focus on helping folks understand the characteristics of the species, unified with essential techniques required to maintain plant health. I believe that the intersection of these two principles fosters an intuitive understanding of how to provide proper care necessary to maintain healthy Satsuki bonsai. So let's get back to the misconception the book is not comprehensive. Not only is this statement highly subjective, it is also woefully ambiguous. That which is comprehensive to one person may be completely inadequate to others. This statement has been lobbed by a few internet masters merely seeking to protect their turf. They are unable or unwilling to understand simple descriptors such as a book's title or description. In support of their critique that the book is not comprehensive, they'll cite the lack of information on propagation. The title of my book is Satsuki Azalea Bonsai, A Fundamental Study, right there. This was intentionally selected to overtly infer any information contained within is related to Satsuki as bonsai. Further, the book's description, which is included in all the marketing material, contributes more detail highlighting that the content of the book is focused on information related to Satsuki as bonsai. Propagation is a precursor phase in the development of a bonsai. Propagation is not bonsai. Finally, propagation is an expansive topic deserving the focus of an entire book. Attempting to shoehorn propagation into a book about another topic diminishes the complexity and skill involved in the discipline and serves only to dilute all of the book's material. It's here that I need to say clearly and unambiguously, I welcome earnest criticism. Nobody, including yours truly, gets everything right every time. And prior to this book's publication, I accepted that there would be criticisms. However, I have little tolerance for those internet masters who engage in willful misinterpretation, posting misleading and uninformed opinions on my book. I will not allow them to go unchallenged. I believe that these few trolls are simply trying to protect that small pocket of the social media universe they frequently inhabit. Their insecurity demands they do all they can to discredit anything they do not understand or contradicts their history of statements and guidance on Satsuki azaleas. I'm incredibly proud of my book and the information contained therein. Where I willingly share the results of my efforts, these internet masters rarely, if ever, offer practical examples of anything they do or recommend. Thankfully, criticisms have been few and far between. Let's move on to the second misconception, and that is, information in the book is specific to California. It's understandable to see how some readers might come to this conclusion. I should have been more clear when discussing the perspective represented by chart data and how they should be adapted. On pages 17 and 42, page 15 and 40 in the ebook, I noted that the reader's climate may vary from the San Ramon, California location I used as a comparison to the Tokyo, Japan data. However, these clarifications were embedded within a paragraph with no emphasis or further explanation. This is my mistake. Let me take a moment to clarify the intent behind the chart data and the guidance I offered in the book. Where the charts are concerned, I wanted to show how the climate of a location in some country could vary considerably from Japan, where Satsuki azaleas originated. Here, each reader may substitute my San Ramon, California data with data specific to their own location in order to assess the variance between Japan and the reader's location. It's really easy to find your information. A quick internet search reveals numerous online tools that display historical climate details for any area. In Chapter 5, I offer suggestions on seasonal care. Here, the primary guidance is based upon the climate in Japan. But I also end each season with Rick's adjustments. This was by design so that all readers begin with the same baseline information, using Japan as the common reference point. By showing my adjustments, I wished to provide an example of how I adapted based upon my own location. The variance between Japan and the reader's location will determine the degree of any adaptations required by the reader. To summarize here, my underlying thought here was to provide a template with which the reader could substitute their own data and arrive at a means of tailoring care specific to their unique climate. Simply substitute California data with your own. I'll conclude this topic with a postscript describing my own personal experience adapting these same care guidelines to a different environment. As many of you may remember from my earlier videos, I moved from California to the Midwest in 2023. Recognizing that I'm stating the obvious here, the climate in California is vastly different from that of the Midwest. On top of that, the water quality at my new location is awful. Knowing the core seasonal requirements of Satsuki enabled me to correctly adapt my approach to winter and summer care. Spring and fall were easy. While I'm still learning the subtle differences, I'm gratified for the success I am achieving having modified my own plant care specific to my new area. After determining the focus of this book, as I spoke to earlier in this video, I established a core concept around which all of the book's content would relate to, and that is, the key to developing attractive Satsuki bonsai lies in understanding the species and how to keep them vigorous. Styling is useless if we don't understand how to keep the plant healthy. Now, I take a lot of pride in offering one of the few books on bonsai that gives focus to a single species. Fewer still have detailed the climatic and topographic conditions encouraging that species to thrive in nature. Therefore, my top-level goal was to help readers become knowledgeable on how to keep their Satsuki bonsai healthy. Full stop. The follow-up to this book will contain advanced techniques and styling philosophies specific to Satsuki bonsai. Understanding the concepts of this book positions readers for success with my next offering on Satsuki azaleas. In addition to my top-level goal, I had secondary goals too. I wanted to appeal to a wide range of bonsai practitioners from beginner to advanced. And for those audiences, I wanted to show not just a technique, but also the result of the technique. The only way to do this was to use examples of my own trees. I did not rely upon images of trees owned by others. The results that you see in the book are a direct result of the highlighted technique. I also wanted to ensure that the information is approachable by using an informal, kind of a light-hearted voice. I wish for the reader to have the sense that I was there beside them, supporting them in this journey. I wanted to layer the information in such a way that subsequent readings yield a deeper understanding. Because readers digest information differently, rereading the book should continue to be engaging. It had to be a detailed reference and not some superficial treatment of the subject. I wanted to honor the cultural influences that gave rise to Satsuki bonsai. The woodblock prints that I used for each of the chapter introductions are the most obvious example of this goal. I also wished to inject some personal experience through the sidebar stories for those who have not yet visited Japan. Finally, I wanted the book's construction and layout to be top-notch. A couple of examples include selecting really nice paper for the interior pages, using traditional offset printing for crisp, clear text and graphics, and allowing the additional steps in the printing process to preserve and enhance the detail and quality of the book's images. And to complement the ambitious goals I had established for the book, I intentionally selected cover imagery different from other books on Satsuki azaleas or bonsai. Departing from the more common approach of selecting an eye-popping image of a Satsuki in full bloom, or of an entire tree and pot displaying exemplary style, I chose instead to depict an actual technique visually differentiating my book from others on bonsai instruction. As a composition, the translucent appearance of the shoot in the foreground and the detail of the hairs against the green background of the shoot was striking. I also enjoyed the contrast between the well-used iron scissors and the shoot it was about to cut. Well, I'd like to believe that every chapter in my book is equally important and earth-shaking. In truth, 2 chapters are crucial to unlocking the information contained within the remaining chapters. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 are those 2 critical chapters, and here's why. Chapter 2 introduces us to several natural influences enabling Satsuki to thrive in the wild. Here we examine where in Japan Satsuki naturally occur and why. This chapter also details the specific characteristics inherent to this species that help or hinder the success of Satsuki in nature. These characteristics set up an important factor introduced in Chapter 5, which is the diurnal variation. If you are curious about this relationship, read the bullets under the heading Habitat and Nature on page 18, then turn to page 88. These are pages 16 and 89 in the ebook, and read Rick's adjustments. Also note that all seasonal charts in Chapter 5 contain a data point for diurnal variation. This is a really important concept that I think many readers may have missed. I also introduced the classification of Satsuki azaleas based upon where in Japan they originated. Later discussions reveal how these different classifications require specific care. This is another source of pride for me, as this book represents the first time this distinction has been detailed anywhere. Even the internet masters now refer to this distinction, though they don't quite understand how to apply this knowledge. Fully understanding Chapter 2 facilitates an intuitive understanding of Satsuki care and maintenance, detailed in those later chapters. This includes the timing of when we repot, why Kanuma is ideal for Satsuki, why top dressing is so important, and how to determine the proper sun exposure. Chapter 3 goes into detail about the unique nature of Satsuki roots. Understanding this chapter prepares the reader for information related to any repotting activities. Serves as a foundation for later discussion on watering techniques. It also offers a deeper understanding of why Satsuki have a weaker crown, going further than the often quoted statement, Satsuki are basal dominant, therefore they have a weak crown. By developing an understanding of chapters 2 and 3, the reader may then jump to any of the following chapters and know, and I mean really know, why the techniques are being used or the guidance is offered. I believe the key to success with Satsuki is in developing an intuitive understanding so that anything you do seems natural and instinctive rather than attempting to remember obscure steps based upon some other flawed guidance. Further still, and even more exciting, developing an intuitive understanding will enable you to solve problems beyond those we cover in this book. I vividly remember the day when the idea of writing a book occurred to me. I'd been studying with Nakayama-san for just over 4 years. On this particular day, we were talking extensively about growth characteristics. At one point, he explained how the different methods employed to bend whips and the timing of that activity dramatically affects the resultant growth. To illustrate his point, we journeyed out to several trees throughout the nursery to examine the differences on mature trees. After seeing the practical result of the concepts he had just explained, I was blown away. Up to that point, I knew how fortunate I was to be instructed by one of the foremost experts in Satsuki bonsai. Yet, in that moment, I was struck by an epiphany that this was a singular experience begging to be shared with others. I needed to write about what I was learning, and I was really excited by the prospect. I considered the thought for several more days before discussing with my teacher. It felt like asking his permission to share the knowledge he was passing on to me seemed like the right thing to do. Naturally, he was completely supportive of the idea. Having recognized that I was the fortunate beneficiary of this unparalleled instruction on Satsuki azaleas, it took an additional 10 years to organize, refine, and validate an ever-expanding corpus of information. Only then was I satisfied that my source material would deliver cogent guidance not only for fans of Satsuki azaleas, but the wider bonsai community as well. So you see, my fundamental motivation to write this book arose from a sincere desire to share unprecedented information on Satsuki azaleas with the English-speaking bonsai community. No doubt there are some folks who might wonder if there are differences between the softcover, regular edition, and special edition versions of this book. Of course, we have the ebook and electronic version of the book, and it contains all the same information. But for purposes of this discussion, we'll only talk about the physical books. The only difference between the 3 editions is the cover itself. The interior pages are exactly the same. The soft cover was released as an economical alternative. This version saw the most copies printed of the 3 editions. The regular edition is a hardcover, and it was released for those who prefer a book with a more durable cover and might also wish to display the book more prominently. This version had about half the number of copies printed as the softcover. The special edition is a cloth hardcover. I had to have a small quantity with a cloth cover because I just loved how it felt, so nice, and how it looked. So there's only a limited number of this edition that was printed. The hardcovers have a further difference from the soft cover in that they've got some additional text on the inside of the dust jacket, there and there. I know you probably can't read it, but that's okay. Get the book and you can read it. And also the graphic and text on the title is debossed on the cover itself. And that turned out really great for this special edition. Since my book was published, I received an overwhelming number of positive comments. It's especially humbling when meeting you at shows. At times I feel my emotions welling up so high that I'm challenged to maintain my composure as we speak. I'm indebted for your support. So to all of you who have purchased my book, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for those of you thinking about buying a copy, what the hell are you waiting for? While this only scratches the surface, I hope hearing about some of the background behind how my book came to be was interesting for you. And remember, chapters 2 and 3 are key. If you have enjoyed this video, I sure would appreciate your likes and comments. And please do subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.